How you doing, and welcome to my channel. As you can see today, I'm taking a look at the new Hot Toys Star Wars General Grievous MMS 760, and just having a quick look at the box there, you can see that it is quite a tall box. Obviously General Grievous is quite a tall character, so therefore in turn the box is going to be tall, obviously, and I'm struggling to get it all in frame, as you can see there. An image of the figure itself on the front cover, quite a dynamic pose out of him there, the usual Star Wars banner around the box, and a different image of him at the bottom on the banner, and then at the side on the banner we have a different image again of General Grievous with his electro staff in his hand there, and then on the back we have the usual Hot Toys warnings and information. And in typical Hot Toys die-cast fashion, we do have him packed in a styrofoam box, which is just like your Iron Man or your Robocop figures. You do get them in this styrofoam packaging to protect them during shipping or in transit, and this lid just pops off there. I'm not going to take it off because everything's just going to fall out while it's standing up there, so I'm not going to open it up, but you can see it says General Grievous on the front of it, embossed into the front of it. And without further ado, let's get him out of the box and give him a quick pan of him before we get into the details. So a quick pan of the figure before we get into the details, and what I've been doing lately is I've been just putting out some fun facts while we do the pan. So, Supreme Commander of the Droid Army, Grievous was originally a Kaleesh warrior from the planet Kali. His original name was Kamanji Shilal. I've probably butchered that name, Kamanji Shilal, I think it was. I probably mispronounced it. Somebody correct me in the comments if I've mispronounced it. Turned into a cyborg by Count Dooku under the orders of Darth Sidious, and Count Dooku did convince Grievous that it was the Jedi who had destroyed his ship, which led him to be transformed into a cyborg, his organs taken out and transplanted into a cyborg. And his coughing is wheezing. He originally had wheezing when he was transformed into a cyborg because of his organic parts didn't really take to the cybernetic parts. But the coughing comes about from Mace Windu crushing his chest plate into his lungs and damaging him forever. And the cough is actually recorded by George Lucas himself. George Lucas had a really bad cough when he was ill one time, and he recorded the cough and put it through a synthesizer and in editing, and that is actually George Lucas's cough that we hear in the movie, and the wheezing that we hear in the movie from General Grievous, it is actually George Lucas's voice doing that, or cough doing that. So that's just an interesting fun fact. And just as a way of putting things in perspective, size-wise, I have Clone Wars Kenobi here, and just putting them beside each other, there is quite the height difference. It's actually, is that accurate? I don't recall General Grievous being that tall, but is that accurate? I don't know. I'd have to look back. I don't see why it wouldn't be, why Hot Toys would make him bigger than he should be. Now, I do have him a full stretch here. Obviously, in the movie, he's more hunched over, in a more kind of crouching, kind of hunched over position. So maybe if I just crouch him down a little bit and get him into more of a movie accurate kind of position, it might look a bit more. It's kind of take a second or two just to get this guy right, to get him posed and standing up. Just bear with me just a second. I have crammed this bit into the video at the last minute, so there we go. Is that a bit more? That is a bit more accurate now with him just hunched over that little bit. It kind of looks a bit more like it. I suppose that's more like it. So there we go, just a kind of a height perspective for you before we move on. So here we have a quick look at all of the accessories that come with General Grievous out of the box. Quite a few. So just starting off with his hands, I suppose, we will take a look at the details, and we'll just have a look at these ones first. And these are the ones that don't split. The other four here do split, but we'll have a look at these ones first. And anybody who knows the lore knows that in the early episodes of the Clone Wars animated series, Grievous only had 4 fingers on each hand, and in the movies he had 6. So it was later updated on the animated show for him to have actually 6 fingers. So there was some debate over that over the years, and you know, some disagreements about how many fingers he actually had. But you can see all the fingers are articulated. They do articulate independently, which is really fantastic. You know, you can kind of pose them in many different positions. They can be manipulated whatever way you want. And these ones don't split, and they're the only ones that pivot in a 360 degree, where the other ones here, because they split in two and they have a peg in each hand, they don't articulate because they don't spin around 360 unless they're split. When they're complete like that, they don't spin. But you can see all the details of all the speckling and that, you know, through them. And, you know, it's not just a perfectly white hand, and it is uniformed with the rest of the figure, and they are all articulated for those hands as well. Then we have these ones here that are fixed in a gripping position, and they split as well for basically for holding the lightsabers, the 4 lightsabers. So if I can get it to focus. So there are many options there, and again, these ones, when they're complete as one, they don't spin in a 360. Then we have his severed hands, and these just, if I just bring up the light a little bit, I've noticed that's a bit dark. And these are to represent when he gets his arms severed. And you can see we have the 2 severed hands there, or arms there, and they go on the lower arms, the lower portion of the arms when they split. And then we have these pieces here that are to represent just fully severed parts of his arms. And these pieces here are kind of a rubbery, soft, rubbery, plasticky kind of mold, and it's great that they're not solid plastic, because I think they'd already be broken if that was the case, to be honest. So I'll show you in just a second, you know, how do you swap out the arms and put the severed arms on. And just showing you here really quickly how you swap out the severed part of the arm. You would just take off the hand, obviously. You would split the arm into 2, and you just pull, you give that a good tug. Now, I didn't have that fully clipped in. It does take a bit of effort to pull that out, but for my own convenience, rather than knocking things over and struggling to unclip it, I just left it sitting there. But it does click in and stay quite tight in, and you can see there that it has just a hole here for it just to slot in, and it really does click in, and it makes quite a clicking sound, quite an audible sound, and that is really solid in there. Now, as you can see there, I nearly knocked them over pulling that off. Bit difficult to do, but you know, if you give it a good yank, it'll come off. And then we have the alternate part. Is that the right one? No, it's the wrong one. There we go. This one here for the fully severed arm, which just clips on as well and goes on like so. I'm not really sure why anybody'd pose them like that, but the options are there. Not accessories I'll be using, but it is definitely a viable option to you know, pose them with the severed arm if you want to show them a bit more battle damaged. And you can obviously do the same on the other side too, but it is the lower arms that come off. The top arms don't come off, they don't disassemble. Then we have his lightsabers, 8 lightsabers in total. As you can see there, 4 wired and 4 non-wired for going into the sleeve, or sorry, the pockets in the cloak he's wearing. And then we have 2 smooshing effects, like any Hot Toys Star Wars figure, and we have 4 lightsaber blades, 2 blue and 2 green, just like General Grievous carries. So, you know, they all look the part, and again, we'll have a look at them a bit later on, all lit up and on the figure when we're doing some posing. And then we have his blaster that he comes with, And I'm not too sure how many people are going to be posing with the blaster, to be quite honest. It looks the part, it looks accurate, it looks just like the one he's carrying. There is a bit of dry brushing running through it there, no moving parts. Looks the part, does the job, so I won't be using it. It's going to stay in the box for me, to be quite honest. But it is there if you so choose. And then we have his electro staff, and I'm only just about getting it into frame. But just having a look at the details of it there, you can see it has all the details running through it, and it's encased in this clear acrylic kind of tubing. And these lightning effects or electricity effects, oh, it's gone too far. There we go. They do just pop on the ends of it there to give the effect of the electricity. I'm not a major fan of them, to be honest with you. They are what they are, you know. They kind of look the part in a way. I don't know if there was a way of maybe battery operating that and getting them to light up a bit better, would it look better. And they're not the same mold. Those effects, those electrical effects, they are two very different molds. They're not just carbon copies of each other. They do look rather different on each end. So again, you do have the option of posing them with the electro staff. So there we have it for, one more piece as well actually is the gold coin. This is the limited edition gold coin, you know, the special edition. It says General Grievous, Separatist Alliance and Star Wars Hot Toys Limited on the back. Not a big fan of the coin, to be honest. It's just going to sit in the box. Not, if they gave us stands for them, maybe I'd pose them or beside the figures. So there we have it for those parts. And then finally we have his cloak that he wears, and it is wired all the way through. It has 5 wires running through it, each rib. So there's one on the end, one here, one in the middle, one here, and one at this end. So I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. I don't like the wire. I would have liked the drape. I'd like Jackson Zoo or somebody or Kelly Studio to do a drape cape for him, because the wires in it, they're okay. It just doesn't drape naturally because of the wires. I'd like even somebody to bring out a burned effect one that looks battle damaged, but you can see the print on it there is done quite well. That's not coming off. That print on it is definitely not coming off. And you can see on the insides he has his pockets for his lightsabers, and on the top of it here we have a brooch, little pinny kind of brooch thing on it there. Now I have left it clipped in because getting that clipped in is it's just come undone. Brilliant. Getting it to clip in is an absolute nightmare, and it's so flimsy. It's not done. Bit of a fail, bit of a nightmare from Hot Toys. So I just leave it clipped in and I just work it over his head if I'm putting it on him, so I don't have to fiddle with it on him and start knocking stuff. Nice pattern on the inside of it, an accurate pattern on the inside of it there, those diamond effect kind of pattern on it, and it is the right size, and we'll have a look at it on him a bit later on. So there we have it for the accessories. And last but not least, we have his base. You can see it says Star Wars General Grievous, and we have the floor of that particular scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi pops his head up and says hello there. And you can see we have the burned effect on the floor from where General Grievous was walking towards Kenobi, spinning those lightsabers, and the bottom ones were hitting off the floor, and we have a really nice effect of that either side of the base and it on this printed part here, and it looks the part. There's a bit of texture to it as well. Quite a big base as well, because he is obviously a big figure. And even this part here, the crotch grabber, has an extra support for the weight of the die cast, just to, you know, to hold the weight of it, you know. So it is supported quite well. So there we have it. Let's move on and take a look at the figure itself. So here we have General Grievous, and I know I have him in a bit of a funny pose there, but the reason why I've put him in this pose is because I kind of want to showcase how sturdy and how strong the body is. With all the die cast components in it and the ratchets in it, you can get him pretty crouched forward or tilted forward there. hunched over. That's the phrase I'm looking for. He's almost at a 90-degree angle there. He's not going anywhere. He's quite solid. He's quite sturdy. My only gripe really is when you bend the legs that far. This back panel here has a tendency to pop off, which is a bit of a nuisance. You kind of manipulate the legs around it so the back panel doesn't catch on the legs and doesn't pop off. But he is quite sturdy there. There's, he's not really going anywhere. There's not a major risk of him falling over. Now, I wouldn't keep him on a shelf or anything where if he does tumble, he's gonna come crashing to the floor. But if you have height issues, for displaying, you can crouch him down in a display cabinet. And if he does take a tumble in a display cabinet, he's just gonna press against the glass or something. That would be kind of ideal. Like I said, I wouldn't put him on a shelf to take a dive off a shelf. But as you can see there, he does, stand there. But the only way to do this guy really, because the height of him, is to do him by sections. So we are going to focus in on the bottom half of it for now, and I'm going to bring that light up just a little bit, probably a little bit too intense. But we'll have to have a look at the dark parts and the lower part of his leg, and you can see there that it's not just a plain chocolatey brown colour. There is a bit of speckling running through it all, and the toes aren't individually articulated. That's obviously to do with stability. If they were articulated, he wouldn't be as stable. The whole base plate that they're on, though, is quite stiff on the joint. You can see it rotates and it pivots and it tilts backwards and forwards. There is quite a lot of articulation in them, as you can see. And this part here of the leg is what takes most of the weight, or all of the weight, and it's on a very stiff ratchet, very, very stiff ratchet. And it really does make an audible click when you move that part. And then moving up to his shins and the white parts of him, that I have to bring the light down. Trying to find a balance here with this white and dark colours is very difficult. But you can see there's a fair bit of speckling through them. They're not just plain white. There is, through all the white parts and the brown parts, there are all speckled, and it's not all uniform, as you can see there. With this section here, there's a little bit of orange running through. I'm just going to bring those lights down a bit more again, because there's quite a bit of whitewash there. But just looking at the panels there, as you can see there is quite a bit of speckling. And there's kind of an orange hue there and there, kind of like maybe, let's say, a geonosis kind of sand colour. Everywhere, every now and again, throughout the white parts, there is the orange kind of effect, and all the joints there are speckled as well, and the brown parts there. And speaking of joints, actually, we do have a double hinge on the leg here, so when you do bend the leg like this, and again, a very, very stiff ratchet, very audible click, and it does have a double bend, as you can see there. So you can get him into, like, that's his leg folded right in half there. So it's such a strong joint. I'm struggling to get that straight again. It's really, really stiff. I can't see it ever failing. And then moving up to his thigh area there, you can see that this part here is like, it's more closer to a bronze than a chocolatey brown. It's not quite the same colour. You can see the difference in it there. It is slightly different, and it contrasts nicely. And there is a bit of detail, up in this section here, and some more kind of speckling running through it as well, which really looks the part. And again, if I could just get them a bit lower, more detail up in the top of the thigh area there as well, or where the hips would be. Just some intricate details just to add to that, realism and the accuracy. And just looking at the back there as well, there are quite a lot of details running through it as well. As much as that's dark, like I said, I'm struggling to find a balance here, and my lighting is kind of all over the place, just trying to find a nice balance here so you can see the darker parts without whitewashing. But you can see the detail in the back of what you would call the calf area there, I suppose. And there's some nice details running through them there. And you can see the double hinge joint there as well. And the details at the back of his legs all look really good and really accurate as far as I can remember. So that's kind of the bottom half of him there. And what we'll do next is we'll move up to is midsection area, and then we'll move up to the head sculpt, obviously. So the midsection here, you can see these panels here are all speckled again with this sandy effect and gritty effect on them. And I am going to point out a fail so far is the glue has failed on this part here, and it just keeps popping off on me. I'm going to have to re-glue it. Very cheap glue by the looks of it. Every time I ratchet a joint, it just falls off. Bit of a nuisance, but not the end of the world. A bit of glue will fix that. And just while I'm pointing that out, I will point this out as well. I'm not sure if anybody else has this issue, but when you bend the legs too far, and the instructions do kind of warn you on it, but this panel here has a tendency to want to pop off, and I think there's a glue fail on it there. Again, you know, I'll fix it with a bit of glue, but what's happening is Hot Toys, in my opinion, haven't left a whole lot of clearance between the top of the legs and this panel here. So when you do want to kind of move the legs in a certain position, it puts strain on this panel here, and it has a tendency to just pop off. And you can kind of see there, if I flex his leg in and out there, you can see the panel catching the top of the leg and warping. So it's a bit of a nuisance. You kind of have to be careful with it. But again, a bit of glue will sort that out. But looking at the intricate details of them there, we have this kind of silver piece here, or titanium looking piece here on them, which has a bit of, you know, a bit of weathering on it as well, you know, a bit of damage to it. It looks, you know, worn, it looks used. If I can bring this light up again to see these dark areas, bit of damage to it. I'm not sure if the camera is picking up on that damage on the titanium piece there. And it works its way all the way around to the back and underneath that back armor there, which again looks accurate and looks really good. And then we have this section here, which should be closed. It's made its way open, but it opens up to reveal these two ribs here, which you can move out of the way. I'm not sure why they're movable. I'm not sure how accurate that is, that you can move those. And if I grab the light there and do my best to kind of highlight his internal organs there, or his organic parts to him, you can kind of see his lungs in there. You can see the details, you know, with this, you know, in this kind of green sack, so to speak, and what looks like a heart in there maybe. It is quite well detailed in there inside that green sack. It does have all the correct organs inside it, and it does look the part. Again, I'm going to bring the light up a little bit more just so we can see it a little bit better, but I don't want to whitewash that the white parts out. I don't want to you know, blow them up too much, so I'm going to bring it down, the light down again. And if I close this panel off now, I just have to move these ribs back in, and they're not the easiest to get my pudgy fingers into. If I can get that in, there we go, and just close it off there. This is a really awkward figure to review, I might add. It's really, really awkward. Just getting the contrast right, or the balance right between the white parts and the darker bits is a bit of a nuisance. And he's so fiddly as well, or finicky. You can see on the panels there that there is a bit of speckling all running through his chest piece as well, and some damage as well, and a couple of gouges here, and on this side here is quite different. Big gouge here, and some kind of scorch kind of marks, you know, smoky kind of scorched marks running through it as well, which all look really good. And if I just bring his arm down here and just rotate him around, you can see that his armor is similar to the rest of the figure. It has all that kind of gritty, sandy, speckled effect running through it. And we have this hand here, you know, with more, you know, the speckling, the uniform speckling running through it, as we looked at earlier on. And the shoulder area here, this shoulder plate here is on a ball joint, so it does move, it does, you know, rotate, and it's very nicely done. You can see there it's sitting on a ball joint, or I hope you can see there it's sitting on a ball joint, and it all does move about. As you can see, you can pretty much move it wherever you so choose. And there is more this kind of orange speckled effect up on this shoulder here. Again, just kind of reminds me of the Geonosis sand. And you can see more gouges to the armor here as well. and more speckling running through it. I don't think there's a part of this figure at all that doesn't have speckling and grit on it, you know. And this side here is a different mould. It's not the same mould. It's got a different mould, different level of gouging to it, and cuts in it, and just little bits of this orange running through it. Like I said, it just reminds me of the Geonosis planet kind of colour on him. And again, running up the forearm there, and the brown bits as well, like I said, all have speckling on them as well. There's not a piece of this figure that doesn't have some sort of speckling and effect to it, you know. It all looks really, really good. As for the arms, if I just rotate them around again there, and what I'll do is I will just show you that when the arms are together, you don't have a bicep rotation for starters, and you only have an articulation up to there, bend up to there. There's no pivot in the bicep, so you are kind of limited a little bit when it's together. But when you take them apart, you get a little bit more. You know, you get a little bit more of a bend in the arm there, and there's a little bit more articulation out of them. But when they're together, you're quite limited in the articulation. I'm not saying it's a whole lot better with them separated. And you can see there, if I pull him around to the back there, he is, just let me move this out of the way here, he is on separate ball joints there for each separate arm. For when you separate the arms, when you split them, they do have a bit of independence, and then there's another separate ball joint here for raising them up, and you know that controls the two of them together. So there is 3 ball joints there controlling each arm, which is absolutely fantastic and really, really nice craftsmanship and engineering here. And then on the back of the armor here, more of that kind of orangey Geonosis effect just speckled onto it, and more gouges. Like I said, I'm really struggling here to get this kind of, to not whitewash the orange effect, more gouges in it, and the amount of detail to them. And like I said there, you can see this ball joint here on the shoulder armor as well. So just up in that section alone, there's 4 ball joints, you know, and it allows for so much articulation. It looks really, really, really nice. So there we have it for kind of the midsection part of him there. So what I'll do is I will actually put this arm back together if I can. Hopefully it works out for me. It shouldn't be too difficult. I've only actually done it once before, and it was easy enough, I suppose. Another thing as well, oh, there goes that piece there falling off. As I move him, I'm going to have to pop that back in. No, it won't go back in. It's just a bit of a fail on the glue there. I'm going to leave that off for now. These parts here that stick out on the hand, if I can get it focused in there we go. As I pointed out, these little parts here are kind of a soft rubber or really soft plastic. It's kind of like a rubber, otherwise they just break off. They'd be broken by now and it'd be a bit of a nuisance. So let me just get this arm back together if I can. There's a clip just here that lines up into a hole. There we go. And then this all lined up as well. And I just clipped in. And there's a little magnet as well, that holds it all together. It's not just clips, there is a magnet that holds it all together as well. And then putting the hand back on. And there we go. And that is the arms back in one piece, and not the hardest thing in the world to do, really. No, not at all. It's not really an issue. I am very disappointed in this glue, to be honest with you. I'm wondering what other parts are going to fail, to be honest, glue-wise. I'm going to have to get some glue and get that stuck in a bit more permanently. So, moving up, we'll have a look at the top half, or the head sculpt, should I say. Just before we get into the head sculpt, just something else I forgot to mention as well on the articulation side of things is he does have a side-to-side pivot, a waist pivot. So it's very, very, very tight. But he does have a twist in the torso area as well, which goes from side to side, and it's fantastic. It's very, very stiff though. All the joints in it are quite stiff. So let's get punched in on this head sculpt and get a bit closer and look at the details in the head sculpt and in the neck area. And here we have the Grievous head sculpt. And before I get into the details of it, I just want to point out that in the instructions, it tells you to pull this panel back here to get more articulation, to make clearance for the neck to move. Now my Grievous neck does move forward, it does tilt forward, but it doesn't tilt any further back than that position there, which doesn't require that panel to be moved. So maybe somebody else who has the figure could tell me if their neck goes any further back, but my one certainly doesn't, or I'm afraid to kind of force it. But while I have all that open there, you can see all the intricate details inside the kind of the spinal part of it there, and the tubing that goes all the way around from inside his biological parts, or his organic parts should I say, all the way around to the front, which all looks really, really cool. And I just pull the neck back there. You can see all the armor around his neck is all gouged and damaged as well. And underneath the head sculpt again, we have more of that kind of heck of a lot of wiring in there and tubing in there and so much detail in there, and it all really looks the part. It looks absolutely fantastic and well detailed and sturdy enough. And as for the head itself, if I just turn him to the side again, it does actually lift up just a few millimeters, just to give a bit more height and a bit more movement, and it pushes down, you know, and it does, if I spin him around again, he does obviously have left and right, you know, motion, and he has up and down, and he has a slight little pivot, slight little pivot. If I can just grab him in the right place, there is a little bit of a pivot in it as well. You know, if you want to tilt his head a little bit, not much, but a little bit. And just looking at the sculpt here, obviously his ears have articulation as well, but I don't want to go into I don't want to touch on the scratch on his head too much, because it's been a point of contention. Everybody's mentioned it, so I'm not gonna get into what everybody else has. But just looking at the details of the faceplate itself, and this is the faceplate here, and in order to get the faceplate off, you do have to kind of watch the breathing apparatus parts here, and you do have to work it down around the ears so you don't catch these breathing apparatus part on it there. And I'm actually gonna swap the sculpt over, or the plates over, just to give you a quick idea of what the battle damage one looks like as well. So they are two very different molds. You can see it's not the same mold, just painted differently. There is battle damage actually molded and sculpted into this faceplate. I don't really prefer this head sculpt on him. I prefer the clean one. If there was swap out battle damage parts to go with him, I know the arms battle damage, but if there was more panels and stuff that had swap out battle damage parts, or there was a burned up cape and damaged cape with him, I would most certainly use the battle damaged faceplate. And maybe somewhere down the line we are going to get a severely battle damaged Grievous. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you. But taking off that faceplate has turned his eye in a little bit, hasn't it? Let's see if we can get this eye lined up again. There we go. And there we go, that looks a bit better. Maybe slightly still off. But inside the eyes there, another point of contention is the inaccuracy of the eye colour. And again, not something I'm going to really get into. Many people have discussed that and brought it up, so it is what it is. It's not the most accurate eyes, but when you're looking at them from 2 to 5 foot away from your, you know, from the figure on your shelf, it's not really going to matter in my opinion. And just, I will show you there that both face plates do have the rolling eyeball function, so that is really fantastic to have that option to kind of give them a bit more animation to him by moving those eyes a little bit. Quite well detailed. More of that speckling running through it. A couple of gouges above his left eye, there's a gouge there, and like I said, the ears do articulate as well, so absolutely fantastic. Like, I think every joint that should move or articulate does move and articulate on this figure. It's absolutely fantastic. And what I'm going to do now actually is I will just put the both face plates side by side, so we can compare the two of them and just see the differences in them. So here we have them here side by side. Obviously, you know, the one on the right hand side is the battle damaged one, and they are, like I said, two different sculpts. They're not just repurposed, repainted of the same sculpt. They are, those gouges on the battle damaged one are molded in, and there is different paint applications on him there. You can see on his right eye there, on the battle damaged one, it kind of looks like a bruised eye. It kind of looks like he has a bruised eye there with that pinkish kind of purplish kind of hue underneath it. And just moving it around to obviously the more battle damaged side, which looks very different to the cleaner one. It's not a fully clean one, but it's a cleaner one. So they are two very different faceplates. I just think that the battle damaged one should have had more, you know, swap out parts to show more severe battle damaging. But I do think we're probably going to get a more battle damaged one along the way somewhere. And just again, another example of posing them there kind of hunkered down. You know, just again, if you have a height restriction on your shelves or something like that, maybe you could pose him like that. But I just want to show how kind of articulatable he is. So you can kind of pose him in different ways to take into account for maybe a lack of space that you have. But the only problem with posing him like this, if I can just turn him around to the back, is like I pointed out earlier on, and it's really bugging me, is this panel here just won't go in at all with him like that. He just doesn't have enough clearance in his legs. Maybe that panel should have been made out of rubber and been made a bit more flexible, I think. I don't know. You know, does anybody else have this problem with their General Grievous? I'd really like to know in the comments if anybody else has this problem. Yeah, but, you know, like I said, if they were rubber, maybe they would have been able to just move to accommodate his legs going into different positions. And that's probably my main gripe with the figure. My only real gripe with the figure is that panel coming off. But just showing you kind of, you know, having the ability to pose him, you know, in so many different dynamic ways, and how strong he is. And here we are again. Look at that. That is absolutely fantastic. That he's capable of going down and articulating right down into that crawl mode that General Grievous does do. It kind of reminds me of Battlefront 2, to be honest with you. The only downside is you can't really get the head high enough to get him looking forward. Well, I can't anyway. I can't get his head up. He is kind of looking at the ground in the crawl mode, but it still is absolutely spectacular that you can actually get him down into that crawl mode. You know, like I said, just really reminiscent of Battlefront 2 for me. And if you don't have a load of shelf room for him, you could probably pose him just like that, you know, if you don't have a high shelf for him. And it's just absolutely spectacular engineering. I don't have the sideshow one. I never did have it, but I can guarantee you that the sideshow one is not capable of articulating like that. That is some feat of engineering there. Look at the double bend in the knee there, which allows him to get into that crawl mode. And it's just absolutely epic. It's just spectacular. And so strong and so sturdy and so heavy. You know, I know a couple of those plastic pieces have fallen off, but the die cast and the, you know, all those parts in it are you know, they're really strong. And what a fantastic feat of engineering this figure is. And just another example of how sturdy this guy is. He's actually standing on one leg. I have him stood there on one leg. That's how well built this guy is. Just one leg holding him up there. And, you know, I'm just going to rotate him there just so you can see that he's not being propped up by anything. He has one leg freely standing, no propping him up. And that is absolutely fantastic to have him that strong, that he is capable of just standing there on one leg. And that is some seriously good build quality for a figure so heavy. Now, I'm not recommending you pose him on one leg, not by any means, but I'm just showing you how sturdy he is, you know. And here we have him with all of the lightsabers, and boy was it hard to hide some of those wires. He is on a black background there, and I don't have a USB cable that's black, so he kind of looks like he has a bit of a tail in between his legs there. But if I had a black cable running up there, it'd be a lot more difficult to see. But you can see there, I've done my best to hide the cables. They're running up his arms there. You can kind of see a bit of them on the blue one there on the left. Not the easiest thing to do to hide those cables, because he doesn't have any clothes or sleeves to run the cables up. So a bit of a downside to using the sabers is trying your best to hide those wires. Not ideal, not the best, not the easiest thing in the world to do, but with the black background, it kind of helps a lot. So kind of there we have it there for General Grievous. If you did like the video, please don't hesitate to hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps out my channel. And I've left you with some images here of Grievous himself in kind of different poses and, in different dynamic poses. And take care.